Hi, it's Uncle Creepy. Back to the 1221 rebuild. 1229, I'm sorry. It's the end of the day. At last, good catch. The last segment showed this part, and we now have it assembled, properly adjusted. Everything's all set to install the lower main shaft. And as we pointed out in the beginning of the video, it was missing the inner shim. There should be one of these on the inside of this and one on the outside. And what I've come to experience is that anytime people take things apart and there's extra pieces, they usually keep the pieces. So I looked in the tray, and what do I find? Find a little bottle with needles, and what do you know? This is another area that's a little troubling. The sewing machine needle is like a saw blade, and it needs to be replaced occasionally. Occasionally, for a typical sewer running a machine at 400 stitches a minute, the needle should be replaced about every hour of machine running time. Any needle that you see in a jar like this, you have no way of knowing if the needle is bent at a point where it will not sew anymore, skip stitches, poor stitch quality. So what I tell people is when they take the needle out of the sewing machine, they should make sure that they dispose of it right away. Don't stow it somewhere, because you have no way of knowing once you've stowed it whether it's bad, whether it's good, what it is, what size it is. The size is written, but it's very hard to find. Now in the specialty needles, like this double needle, that's another issue. They're very expensive, but they're not used that often. So we also find the spring that was missing in the clutch assembly. And there's that. So now we've found all the missing components, which we will now put back in where they belong. And the next step is we want to oil the bearing. And the way that I do this is I put it in upside down. I put a volume of oil in the end. I run the shaft down until the oil drains all the way down, so that it coats the inside of the bore evenly. Do both directions. Make sure it's turning well. Now I have the shim on the end of this where it belongs. We're going to install this. Make sure it's turning well. The outside shim goes on here. And the C-clip goes on the end. Now in this case, what's probably happened here is now it's too tight. The reason for that is whoever couldn't find the spacer at the time and decided to leave it out tightened this gear too tight. Now it's closer in than it should have been. So we're now going to remove this. And we're going to loosen these screws, which should not have been loosened to begin with. You now have to reinstall the clip. And we'll have to set this gear. object is this turns very easily, but there's no play, axial play, front to back. Before it was just a mess. There was play in and out, we had spacers, we had all kinds of good stuff. And in the end, didn't work. Very nice. And that's it. Okay, now we're down to the nitty-gritty. We're going to see if it sews. First we have to install the bobbin case. I don't have the base on it yet, so I have to lift it up so I don't damage the cover. Wouldn't want to get this far and then damage the cover, which would be impossible to find. Another great thing about these old fofs is it gives you an opportunity to have yet another career looking for parts. So far, so good. Now we're going to line up for our needle threader, and there you have it. Very delicate part, no longer available, very hard to find. So when this needle threader hook breaks, it's a new career for somebody. Now this is a little bit awkward without having the base on. I'm going to pick up my bobbin thread. This is a good sign that most of the parts are back in, and so far they're happy. Voila, just out of the thin air fabric. Okay, our top tension is set on 4. That's the proper factory setting. We're going to set our stitch length dial, that's now all repaired and nice, on 3. I'm going to engage my dual feed. Gives me a green light here to tell me that this is engaged. And away we go. That sound you only get with puffs. Once you've sewed on one of these machines, that's it. Okay, now we'll move on to zigzag. We'll go with the full wide zigzag on the longest length. I'm using a yellow thread on the top and white on the bottom. Pretty good so far. I'm going to try a buttonhole, and buttonholes typically will get less top thread tension, so I'm going to put it on about 3.5. I should be using a different foot, but since I'm lazy and I'm not trying to make a buttonhole that'll go into a garment, I'm going to use the regular foot. I'm just going to guess right now at my density. It's in the buttonhole range, but I'm not sure exactly where. So here goes. That's much too tight. What I'm doing right now is I'm only going and sewing in place. It's too close together. So I'm going to move to the further end of the buttonhole symbol on my stitch length control. I'm going to go around another cycle. This is still a pretty dense buttonhole, but it is feeding. Doing very well, actually. It's our first sample at the top. As you can see, it was just piling up. The stitch density was so close that it was just staying in one place. When I moved it to the further edge of that buttonhole symbol, I get my feed. That's not perfect, but that's not bad for a first test. The next test, what we're trying to do is test all the functions, the buttonhole function, the zigzag function, and so on. Now I'm going to try a blind stitch, left-hand needle position, any stitch length to press that button, and let's see what's happening. That's a good stitch. Not bad. Now what we're going to do is going to do an overcast. This tests our width and our length and the reverse cycle. Very nice. Very nice. We could go for a little bit of an tension adjustment here, but for a first test, this is pretty good. Now, I'm going to try a decorative stitch. I'm going to use a left-hand needle position on the diamond. That's going to give me just a triangle. Go up to, let's say, stitch number 10. I'm going to come back down into my buttonhole range. And away we go. Now I can mirror image that by using the right needle position. Now I'm going to try the fixed ratio setting. I'm going to come up to the same pattern. Going to come up to, let's say, size 15. Looks good. That's the elongator. That keeps the pattern density the same, but stretches it out. Quite a system for a mechanical system. Today's systems, being electronic, that's easily done. Back in this day, that wasn't so easily done. So this machine is, like most FOSS, way ahead of its time. Very peculiar model. This is it. There was no others after it or others before it. This casting is standalone. Many of the parts on this machine are peculiar to this model only. Unlike other 1200 series machines, which are many parts are interchangeable. So you have a broader field to choose from when you're looking for salvage parts. This one, it's just a 1229. You can't get most of the parts for this. So everything that should be kept original and not broken, in this case, is everything. So that's it for our stitch length. We still have a few minor adjustments to make, but now we're going to install the covers and do a final saw off, and then it's ready for the customer to pick up. So, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and maybe if I do real well, someday I'll get me a cameraman.